Catherine, the Princess of Wales, never looks out of place. Wherever she goes, she carries herself with quiet confidence, grace, and a sense of purpose. She isn't just a royal figure anymore, she's the living image of what many believe the future Queen of the United Kingdom should be. Alongside Prince William, she has grown into her role with poise, transforming the face of modern royalty. But one night at Buckingham Palace, during what began as a tense and uncertain evening, Catherine's calm presence and one simple gesture changed everything. The palace was glowing that night. The chandeliers sparkled above long, golden tables that stretched across the great hall. Silver cutlery gleamed under the lights, crystal glasses shimmered, and the air carried the soft hum of polite conversations. Every corner of the room reflected centuries of royal tradition. It was a grand banquet, the kind of evening the royal family is known for, where every chair, every plate, every word matters. The guest of honor was the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. At 45, he was already a seasoned leader, known around the world for his calm but commanding presence. Only a few days earlier, he had made international headlines after his powerful speech at the United Nations, where he condemned the violence in Gaza and called for justice. His words had echoed globally, and that same intensity seemed to follow him to London. For King Charles, this night was more than dinner and polite speeches. Britain and Qatar shared strong economic ties. Qatar's investments shaped much of modern London, from skyscrapers and office towers to famous department stores. Keeping this friendship strong meant more than smiles and handshakes. It meant trust, diplomacy, and balance. As the guests took their seats, Catherine entered the hall. She wore an elegant ivory gown and a diamond tiara that once belonged to the late Queen Elizabeth II. Having recently returned to her royal duties after completing her cancer treatment, her presence carried a deeper meaning. To many, she symbolized strength and hope, someone who had faced darkness and come back shining brighter. At first, everything seemed perfect. Glasses clinked, conversations flowed, and the string orchestra played softly in the background. But as the meal began, Catherine noticed something others had missed. The Emir's expression was tense. His seat, placed a few chairs away from King Charles, seemed to bother him. For most people, it wouldn't have mattered. But in the world of state visits, seating arrangements carry hidden messages, and this one could be read as a sign of distance. His aides leaned in close, whispering quietly. The tension was subtle but real. Catherine saw it right away. Over the years, she had developed a gift, the ability to read the room, to notice when someone felt uneasy. She could spot nervous schoolchildren before anyone else or a worried parent trying to stay calm during a hospital visit. Now, in this glittering hall, she saw that same discomfort on the face of a world leader. She didn't act right away. Instead, she waited for the right moment. When the first toast was raised, she turned slightly toward the Emir, met his eyes, and offered a warm, genuine smile, not the polite royal kind, but one that carried kindness and respect. Then she raised her glass toward him. It was a small gesture, simple and silent. But in that world of symbols, it meant everything. The Emir paused, looked back at her, and nodded before lifting his glass in return. The tension in his face softened. His aides relaxed. A small spark of understanding had been lit. As dinner continued, Catherine took gentle opportunities to speak with him. She didn't talk about politics or trade. Instead, she asked about his family, his children, his travels, the work he was most proud of. The Emir, who was often reserved in public, began to open up. He spoke about his children with pride and even smiled, a rare sight for those who knew his serious nature. Around the table, people noticed. What had been a strained, uneasy atmosphere slowly turned into warm conversation. British officials exchanged relieved glances. Catherine had done what even skilled diplomats sometimes struggle to do. She turned tension into trust, not with power, but with empathy. But that was only the beginning. As the speeches began, King Charles spoke first, highlighting the friendship between Britain and Qatar, their shared history, investments, and commitment to cooperation. The applause was polite and expected. Then came the Emir's turn. His English was clear, his tone steady. But his message carried weight. He thanked the king for his hospitality but then spoke strongly about fairness in world politics and the need for peace in Gaza. His words were serious, cutting through the elegance of the evening like a blade. The room fell quiet. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the kind of speech people expected at a royal banquet. But Catherine didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on him, listening attentively, nodding gently. Her expression said, "I hear you." When he finished, the applause was hesitant. Catherine leaned slightly toward him and spoke softly, "Your words remind us that every family, everywhere, deserves safety and peace." It was just one line, short but powerful. She didn't ignore his message or try to soften it. Instead, she connected it to something universal, family. That single word touched the emir deeply. His face relaxed again. He nodded, clearly moved by her understanding. Later, when the music played and guests mingled, Catherine joined a smaller circle near the emir. She asked him about Qatar's schools and education programs, praising his efforts to improve learning opportunities for young people. The emir lit up, speaking passionately about his country's plans, scholarships, and sports initiatives. Catherine listened with genuine curiosity, asking thoughtful questions that showed she had done her research. By now, the change was obvious. The once tense leader was smiling, engaged, and comfortable. The room had shifted from polite stiffness to open conversation. Diplomats watched in awe. Catherine was doing what no official briefing could prepare for, she was connecting heart to heart. As dessert was served, King Charles watched quietly, clearly pleased. He didn't need to step in, his daughter-in-law had already done what needed to be done. The emir's admiration grew as the evening went on. He praised the royal family's grace and even mentioned Catherine by name in conversation, calling her a woman of great understanding. But the night wasn't over. As the final courses were cleared, the emir leaned back, his tone turning more serious again. "Britain often speaks of partnership," he said calmly, "but sometimes Qatar is asked to give more than it receives. That does not feel fair." The room fell silent. Everyone felt the weight of his words. Catherine met his gaze and replied softly but firmly, "Your Majesty, I understand. True partnership must always be built on mutual respect. I believe this evening shows that your voice is valued here." Her words carried both strength and humility. She didn't make promises she couldn't keep, but she acknowledged his concerns with honesty. The emir looked at her carefully, surprised by her directness. Then he smiled faintly. "You speak with honesty, Princess. That is rare." Once again, the tension dissolved. The conversation flowed more freely. Catherine gently guided it toward lighter ground, asking about Qatar's growing cultural projects, museums, art, and heritage. The emir spoke with excitement about his vision of Doha as a global cultural hub. Catherine related it back to her own experiences visiting art galleries with her children. The emir chuckled. "You remind me that leaders are also parents," he said warmly. "The world forgets that sometimes." Laughter spread around the table. The mood had fully transformed. Guests who had been nervous earlier were now smiling, enjoying the moment. It was clear to everyone that Catherine had changed the course of the evening with nothing more than kindness, attention, and sincerity. When the time came for final speeches, the emir rose to speak again. But this time, his tone was completely different. Instead of frustration or criticism, his words were filled with warmth. He spoke of shared respect, of friendship between Britain and Qatar, and of the hospitality shown to him. Then, turning toward Catherine, he said, "I want to thank the Princess of Wales for her grace and kindness this evening." The hall erupted in applause. Catherine smiled modestly, lowering her eyes. She never sought praise, but that moment spoke louder than any headline. As the banquet came to an end and guests began to leave, the emir approached Catherine one last time. His aides waited beside him, ready to escort him out. But he paused and said quietly, "Princess, you reminded me tonight that respect is earned, not demanded. For that, I thank you." Catherine smiled, placing her hand gently over her heart before extending it toward him. It wasn't a formal handshake, it was something warmer, more human. The Emir placed his hand over his own heart in return. The hall fell silent, cameras clicked softly, and in that moment, a fragile bond between two nations felt stronger. King Charles watched from a short distance away, giving a small, approving nod. He knew how easily such nights could go wrong, and how much Catherine had just accomplished without saying a single rehearsed line. As the Emir exited the hall, his voice echoed behind him, "Britain has shown friendship tonight. May this spirit guide our partnership forward." The words lingered in the air. Guests began to talk freely, praising the Princess of Wales. Some admired her calm listening, others her empathy. Everyone agreed that she had turned what could have been a diplomatic disaster into a moment of unity. Catherine quietly rejoined Prince William, asking softly, "Do you think George will want to hear how it went?" They both smiled, a small reminder that behind the royal titles, she was still a devoted mother. In the following days, the story spread around the world. Photos of Catherine and the Emir's shared gesture appeared in newspapers and on television. Commentators called it a masterclass in quiet diplomacy. Even media outlets in Qatar praised her grace and respect, noting that she had listened when many others might have dismissed. For the Qatari people, seeing their leader treated with such dignity meant a great deal. One British diplomat summed it up best: "Sometimes diplomacy happens through speeches and documents. But sometimes, it happens through a single gesture at the dinner table." Catherine never spoke publicly about the evening. She continued her work with early childhood programs, visiting schools and charities as always. Yet, everyone who had been in that room would remember her calm presence. That night, she showed that strength doesn't always come from power, sometimes it comes from empathy. She didn't change the world with politics or promises, but with understanding and sincerity. Where others might have argued or retreated, she listened, and by doing so, she turned tension into trust. The banquet ended as it began, under the golden lights of Buckingham Palace. But this time, the glow carried a different meaning, not of wealth or tradition, but of quiet humanity. And so, the story of that night lived on, the night when one princess reminded the world that sometimes, the smallest gestures leave the deepest mark.